You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. LSU lost to Ole Miss on Saturday. We know that. There's not a tremendous amount of excitement about the remainder of the season. I get that. Most of the attention is going to be geared toward the coaching search and what is next for LSU football, as well it should be. And every time coaches have been asked about the LSU job and addressed the LSU job, we talk about it here because it's all relevant. These are all names that have been mentioned in connection with the job. And when they're asked about it and make public comments about the LSU job, of course, we're going to talk about it here. This is talk radio. This is what we do. We address speculation and we have conversation. So we're going to talk about all of this. Last week, we let you hear from Jimbo Fisher, from Dabo Swinney, and from James Franklin. Two more coaches have now been, and Joe Brady, as a matter of fact. Two more coaches now have been asked specifically about the LSU job. They are Baylor's Dave Aranda and Michigan State's Mel Tucker. Let's start with Mel Tucker. And this is interesting. Remember now, Mel Tucker is the odds-on, the betting favorite to become the LSU head football coach. But Mel Tucker is here in the Monday of Michigan week. Number 8 and 7-0 Michigan State, this coming Saturday, plays number 6 and undefeated Michigan. So timing maybe not the best to ask Mel Tucker about the LSU job, but this is what happened when he was asked, do you have any interest in the LSU job?
This is on the upcoming game versus school down the road, and that's where my concentration on my focus is, and I really appreciate you understanding that.
Remember, there are 3 answers possible to the job speculation question. You have the denial, which is Nick Saban saying, I'm not going to be the Alabama coach. You have the non-denial denial, which is, I really love my job. I love what I have here. And then you have the non-denial, which is, I'm focused on this game, and you don't address it at all, which is what Mel Tucker just did there, which should have your radar go ding, 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 ding. Of course, Mel Tucker's interested in the LSU job. Of course, if Mel Tucker is offered the LSU job, he's going to take the LSU job. I have no idea if Mel Tucker is going to be offered the job, but there is a reason that he is the odds-on betting favorite because I'm sure there are some very big fish in the pond that LSU is pursuing that might not be realistic. Mel Tucker is one that very clearly is the apple of a lot of LSU administrators and decision makers' eye and would be attainable, which is why his betting odds are where they are. Now, the other is Dave Aranda. When this all started, if we go back to the start of this season, I would have told you, and people did ask, if Dave Aranda was a candidate for the LSU job. And I would always flatly say no, that LSU is going to hire a coach with much more experience than Dave Aranda, who is currently in his second season as the Baylor head coach. In year 1, it didn't go so great. Now, I will grant you, of course, that was a COVID season. And the COVID season was largely disjointed, and as difficult as it was for everyone, it was especially difficult for new head coaches because new head coaches were learning their roster, were trying to recruit amid COVID. They had no spring. They had no traditional summer period. So it was a very disjointed year, and Baylor finished last year 1 under Dave Aranda, at 2-7. Their only wins were against Kansas and Kansas State. Thank God for the state of Kansas in the Big 12, apparently, according to Dave Aranda. But in his first normal full season, Dave Aranda has his team at 6-1, and the only loss was that game a couple of weeks ago against Oklahoma State in Stillwater, where at the time it was a battle of unbeatens. He responded with a very nice win over West Virginia, 45-20, and then they got a 2-touchdown win this past week against 19th-ranked BYU, which has lost a couple of late but started the season undefeated. Baylor is playing very good football, and Dave Aranda has turned around a messy situation in a hurry. So I salute Dave Aranda for what he's done, and the really interesting part about the Dave Aranda conversation is what happens over the next 5 weeks is very much going to shape how we feel about a lot of these candidates. For example, how we felt about James Franklin 2 weeks ago, drastically different than how many people feel about him today. They lose to Iowa, albeit they lost Sean Clifford in that game. And when they lost their starting quarterback in that game, the game changed completely. And then they go lose because of some bogus overtime rule where you play 9 2-point conversions, the stupid thing that they did against Illinois. But they lost. And all of a sudden, James Franklin doesn't seem as appealing anymore. Flip side of it is, what if Mel Tucker wins this week against Michigan? What if Michigan State beats Michigan this week and they make a run through this season and finish 11-1, 10-2, whatever it may be? You're going to feel much better about the possibility of hiring Mel Tucker? I could say the same about Dave Aranda, who's sitting here at 6-1 right now. And you know for a fact that the Aranda family loved Baton Rouge. Dave had multiple opportunities to leave and would have taken jobs, but in essence, his family put their foot down. I remember when Dave Aranda got the LSU job, had a conversation with him where he talked about how when they came to Baton Rouge, he didn't even hang his TV on the wall because they'd moved so much going from Utah, Hawaii and Utah State and Wisconsin to Baton Rouge. They'd moved so much, he didn't even bother to hang his TV on the wall. And when after that first year, when Miles was out, Ogeron was in, he got the contract extension, he kind of laughed. I asked him about it again. He laughed. He's like, yeah, the TV's on the wall now. That they were going to stay. The Arandas love Baton Rouge. And I would have no doubt that if he had the opportunity to come back to Baton Rouge, he would. I don't know if he will. Now, Dave Aranda was asked about the LSU job. First, he was asked for his comments on Ed Ogeron's firing, of course, whom he worked for in Baton Rouge.
Anytime there's change like that, that great friends at LSU, and so you hate to see that. And I think, I look at Coach O, man, I look at how much I've learned from him, the time that he spent and really just invested in me when he didn't have to or didn't need me there. And so I recognize that and appreciate that. And so it's sad when those days, like what last week, when those days come, you don't ever want to see that. And so I want to see them have success at the end of the year.
Dave, Ed Ogeron still very much needs you. It's very evident over the last 2 years how badly LSU needed you. And Ed Ogeron, unfortunately, learned that lesson the hard way. But then the follow-up, obviously, was about Dave Aranda's interest in the LSU job.
I love it here. And my family loves it here. And, I think, Baylor has been everything that I thought it would be. I think coming here was an opportunity to grow and to be better. And I think, a lot of times, man, that looks awkward. I told our team that, as there's, I get uncomfortable when I have to look at myself. There's an awkwardness about kind of growing and trying to stretch, man, and be better. And I feel like everything that Baylor stands for, the people that are here, the hearts of the people that are here, I think it's bigger than football. And so I appreciate that. And, I think our team is built that way, and I think it's special.
Okay, so remember now, we may turn this like into a quiz. Remember, there are 3 responses. There are 3 and only 3 responses to the job interest question. Where does that one fall? Anybody want to take a stab? Anybody in the classroom? Yeah, Muse, what do you think?
That's a non-denial denial.
How about it? My guy's learning some stuff over. Give yourself a bell. Give yourself a bell. How about it, Muse? Hot damn. On fire, bro. On fire. It is a non-denial denial. When you talk about how much you love, when you ask the question, do you have interest in the job, and you just talk about how much you love where you are right now. And you know what? Those two things are not mutually exclusive. You can love where you are right now and still have interest in the LSU job. The non-denial denial. Good. You're good, You're good, you. So I would say, listen, I did throw this out on Whiskey and Wine Saturday with T-Bob, and I think I mentioned it maybe on the Scone and Tea podcast earlier today as well. By the way, subscribe to Scone and Tea if you haven't yet. The thing that I will mention is I've been told, and I believe that this sourced information is good. I'm not going to tell you a number, and I think you'll understand, maybe hopefully appreciate why. But I've been told that Scott Woodward did float a contract amount, which is, by the way, this is a very normal practice, that he floated a contract amount in agent circles to see what type of inbound interest he would get. Not like specifically going to one candidate's agent, but just floating this number out there in the community to say, okay, who has a candidate that might be interested in this? Come to me. And I think that has generated tremendous interest. I think that is where the Mike Tomlin conversation has begun. I don't know if that means Mike Tomlin wants the job or will get the job or whatever the case, but I think that's where that inbound interest has come from. That's my opinion on the matter. But because of what LSU is going to be willing to pay for this job and because of all of the resources involved, the things we talk about all the time, you're going to have massive amounts of interest in this job. That I think is going to exceed the level of coach that we're discussing here. Guys that have had great success at maybe their first or second stop, like Mel Tucker. I know it's his second stop, but he's only a 3-year head coach. Dave Aranda in his second year. And I think those would be fantastic tier 2 options. But I think what Scott Woodward is still peeling back the layers of the onion is who's available in that top tier. You know, that cream of the crop. And I still have a sneaking suspicion that he's going to be fishing in those waters. You know, back to the point earlier about how the star might have dimmed a little for James Franklin because of 2 losses. Can we say the opposite is true for Lane Kiffin today? How much better would you feel about that hire today than you would have a month ago after the Alabama loss? I think these next 4 weeks, what happens with these teams the next 4 weeks is largely going to shape this conversation. And as more coaches are asked about it, we'll talk about it. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.